Welcome to www.ThePapare.com, and you're watching The Breakdown, where we bring you end-to-end Sri Lankan rugby. And fifth week of schools rugby just concluded, and Chanaka, what a week we had. Starting off on the 24th, there was a game of Wesley taking on Zahira College, and most of the neutral fans, we included, had our hearts in our mouth.
Oh yeah, it was just one of those really devastating games to watch, because whoever lost that game, you were going to feel desperately sorry for them. And Wesley did well to come back and win that game. I thought they kept their heads under pressure, but again, should probably blame themselves for finding themselves in that position in the first place, because I don't think they executed their game plan as well as they would have liked. They kicked the ball away a little bit too much, I thought, and they didn't kind of get over the gain line with the same intensity that they would have expected to. That was the result of Zahira's defense. I thought Zahira were outstanding on the day. They really knew what was going to come at them, and it's just a poor day for Singawansa. I mean, everybody has those bad days, and the poor guy, he was playing with an injury, and you could see that as well. He had a bad day. If he had a better day, I think perhaps Zahira would even have won that game.
Absolutely. Yusran Lantra going in for a hat-trick. 3 tries he scored in that game, and one of those tries, he just ran around the defender.
Oh, you just love to watch that stuff, don't you? Because he collected the ball, he had time to look up, and he saw exactly what was in front of him. He saw the space outside him, and he just put the afterburners on Sudarshan. It's just beautiful to watch. There's something still very primal about watching two guys run fast. One guy chasing the other guy. There's something just so beautiful about that.
And Lantra, more times than not, have turned out to be the man winning these contests. And talking about this game, Shanaka, you mentioned earlier on as well that we didn't want a team to lose, and Singawansa could have made it happen in the last minute.
He could have, Sudarshan, and I really think he's suffering with that standing leg injury. If you watch him, he's training and he's playing with a really bad big strapping on his left leg, and that's a standing leg. And when that leg is tired sometimes, especially in the last maybe 78th, 80th minute of a game, that's when sometimes you snatch at the ball. And you could see him every time he kicked the ball out of hand, even when he kicked from the tee, he was actually rushing through the kick because he can't spend too long a time on that bad leg. So I think that's something that really is something that Shamli Nawaz has to think about. If he has another place kicker in the side, maybe give him those duties and allow Singawansa just to play, because that injury is only going to get worse, because it looks like it's a structural injury. And the way he was taking the kicks, I could see that discomfort in the standing leg is probably the issue that he has. But I would have still expected him to get one of those 2 kicks over. It would have been 32-all and a fair result, I think, for everyone watching that game, except, of course, maybe for Wesley, who expected to win it. But it was just one of those great games of rugby.
Absolutely, but maybe, just maybe, Shanaka, it's the CRNFC hoodoo. We've seen many players, very able kickers, miss conversions right under the post in that clubhouse end.
Well, you can call it what you like, Sudarshan. I'm not sure whether it's the CR or not, but it was a big miss. It was a big miss. It was a pressure miss. But you can imagine the lad, what he's going through right now. But all is not lost. I mean, Zahira have still more games to come, and they qualified for the next round, I think. So they should come away with a win, I think, sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Why I mentioned that was Chathara Seniratna last year against Royal College, right underneath the post, and we know how much of a big boot he has, and he missed the conversion as well. But like Shanaka mentioned, all is not lost for Zahira College. Zahid Singawansa has good 3 weeks to recover, so that will be a plus point. The next game, St. Thomas's College taking on Science College. Although Zahira didn't have any part to play in this game, they would have had their hearts in their mouth, because Science College, if they won, they would have qualified over Zahira. And I think we agree that rugby would have lost if Science got over Zahira.
Yeah, to take nothing away from Science, but I think Zahira is a better team at the moment. So if Zahira went out because of a mathematical equation issue, then that would have been a little heartbreaking for Zahira for sure. But St. Thomas as well, they made it hard for themselves. I think this Tomian team need to realize that they need to pick themselves up for every game. They can't pick themselves up when they're playing Trinity and then let themselves down when they're playing Science. They can't walk onto the park and expect to win. And I think that's what happened against Science. I think they thought they could turn up and win. And St. Thomas's is not the side they were last year. I think all the other teams have understood that, and they know that there's a scalp for the taking. They know there's an upset in the making when they go out to play them. So I think St. Thomas's need to realize that that's how teams are approaching them, and that's how they're going to have to respond as well. So I don't think they could respond with the kind of intensity that they did on Saturday. I thought Science really took it to them, but St. Thomas's need to sort themselves out up front. They need to make sure that they win that ball, they keep that ball, and that ball retention is the real issue that they're having at the moment.
Shanaka, you mentioned this earlier on in a segment as well. St. Thomas's look like they go into a slump in the second half. Again, it was precisely evident in this game as well. 12 points to nil, they led at half time. Come on to the second half, 20 points to 12. So basically Science wins the second half, 5 points to 12.
Yeah, they do in the second half. So that's how I think it's been for St. Thomas's this whole season. So the coaching staff needs to take a look at that and find out why that is. Is it because your bench strength is not enough? Because if that's the case, there's very little you can do about it. Is it your conditioning is not good enough to last the last half an hour of a game? There are several issues that could come through. It might be a leadership issue. We might be shifting game plans after halftime when we're not supposed to be shifting game plans. So I think the staff needs to examine why it's happening. You need to speak to the players and say, okay, what's going on here, guys? And they need to be able to communicate that properly, and then once they find the reason, they can fix it. But for us on the outside, Sudarshan, it's very difficult to say why it's happening. We can only say that it is happening, guys. You need to look at it.
Absolutely. As for Science, they tried really hard. I believe this was their best outing this season. Madhu Madhava really came onto his own, playing in that number 13 jersey. And Science, they still have hope. They will be looking to put in a better performance when it comes to the plate segment and make sure that they remain in the top division.
Well, they might even win the plate division the way they're going sometimes, because they've been a little inconsistent. But when they play well, they can play well. And guys like Madhu Madhava are good players. They've played alongside good players, so they know how to win games as well. So I think we need to give the Science team some time, which is what I've been saying for a while now. But I think once they go down and maybe play opposition at their level, I think we'll see the best of them.
On Saturday, we had another game up in Kandy. Dharmaraj College playing DSNI College. Rajans got their first victory.
Yeah, and they waited a while for it as well. 45 points to 12. I think they'll be fairly happy with that. They came very close against Royal, but now that they've got that first win, maybe the boys will start thinking, okay, we can win more games. So let's see how it goes. But DS, after coming through at the last moment, Sudarshana, not really competing in this division. And I think you need to look at whether there are too many teams in the top. There's quite a few uncompetitive games. Is that good for rugby? Is that good for the teams who are being hammered by these 40, 50 point margins as well? So that's something you need to ask yourself.
Absolutely, Shanaka. What we can look at is maybe look at a 10 team top division, which would be much more competitive than the current one, and also that will allow players to have more rest during the season as well.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to the big game of Saturday. Royal College taking on Isipathana for the Milroy Fernando Trophy, and the Greens got their hands on their first silverware this season.
Well, this is the match that they want to win every season, isn't it, Sudarshan? For Isipathana, when they come out, Royal is probably the top scalp that they have put up there, and then you probably go down the other schools. So when they went into that halftime break trailing 14 points to 5, I think they would have decided, look, we really need to throw everything at this Royal team in the next 40 minutes. And I was really surprised at the way Royal kind of cracked under the pressure. It just seemed to be some mental block against Isipathana, because you saw them coming through against St. Peter's, you saw them coming through against Dharmaraja, St. Joseph's as well when they were trailing. So I was surprised that they actually cracked this time, because I think the defensive pressure that Isipathana exerted was really good. They didn't concede a lot of penalties, and that was an area where I think Royal suffered, because when they don't get their midfield penalties, then that rolling maul doesn't come into play as much. So I think there would have been about 4 rolling mauls throughout the course of the game, which is not enough for Royal to really break down that opposition. But it was a wonderful defensive performance, and Chamod Fernando with ball in hand, how dangerous is he?
Absolutely. Chamod Fernando versus standout player. He was actually the ThePapare player of the match that day. And Isipathana, Shanaka, had done their homework, right? Because we mentioned this on our segment earlier as well, that they had a defensive problem. They had to sort it out, and boy, did they sort it out against Royal.
Yeah, they did, because the one thing though is that you know where they're coming from. Royal are always going to come at you from the fringes. So Isipathana knew that, and they were able to respond to that, and they really put their bodies on the line, I think. And you look at the tries that Royal conceded. They were from handling errors most of the time. The try that was scored by the Isipathana second row and then by Sumudu Rankotke to clinch the game all came off handling errors from Royal. So that just shows what that line speed does and puts the Royal three quarters under pressure. So if they don't line a little deeper, if they don't play from deep and get the ball into the hands of maybe Janitu Dilshan a little bit more often, then Royal are going to be face a few problems, because that defensive pressure is so great. Let's not take anything away from Isipathana. They managed to force those errors, but Royal committed those errors and played into their hands.
And take a look at this picture. This one is Lacinta Di Costa with the Milroy Fernando Trophy, and his forwards coach Bilal Hassan, who is a Royalist, with the Milroy Fernando Trophy. Shanaka, interesting fact, both these players never won this as players representing their own teams.
Well, interesting, because I don't know whether the Milroy Fernando Trophy, well, it was around when Lacinta was playing as well, yeah. But very interesting that neither of them actually won it. Well, they won it as coaches, and I think they'll be very happy about
together.
Yeah, that was fantastic. But let's make no mistake, Sudarshan, these two guys for me are two of the best young coaches that we have at the moment. They're very intelligent players. I know them both quite well. And Bilal and Lacinta both understand the game very well. So they're guys who are able to nurture these young players, make them do what they need to do. And if you saw the point where the game changed, I thought, was one line out that Royal had that they got off a penalty that we expected them to catch and maul towards the line, but it was stolen at the front by Isipathana, and that was a very clear plan that both these guys have formulated with the Isipathana team. To execute it is even more difficult, but just to have that plan is important, and you could see how they decided to attack the Royal line out where it's vulnerable, and that decision paid off for them. So they were both very talented players. Lacinta Di Costa doesn't get the kind of accolades he deserves, but I think he was probably the most intelligent of the Costa brothers when he was playing. And Bilal, everybody knows what Bilal was like, and if they can bring those qualities to the coaching table, then they're going to be unstoppable in years to come when they get that experience.
Two young coaches straight away thrown into deep end, and they are coming through it. Only one loss in this season so far. Let's take a look at the next game. Antonians taking on the Josephians. Antonians had a lot of expectations on them this season, but again, Antonian fans were disappointed.
Yeah, they were very disappointed, especially after they were leading at half-time. Sudarshan expected to win up there in Kandy, and it was, I just don't understand what has happened to Antonian rugby. There was so much promise at the end of last season. There was so much promise with guys like Madhuanta, Silagama, Amarasinghe, all these guys in their midfield. We expected a lot from them, but I remember speaking to Vaipa Gunaratna after the Thomian game last year, and he said, I'm not worried about this season. Watch out for these guys in the next 2 years. And now this is the first of those next 2 years, and somehow they don't seem to be able to convert their talent into results. And that's something that they need to sit down and have a really long, hard look at themselves and ask why.
It's the team, the Antonian team, did look like they were not playing as a cohesive unit. I think that has been the problem throughout, and that has been the reason why they've lost out a lot of games. Even against the Josephians, 5 points to 8, you're leading at halftime. Second half, at one point it was 11 points to 19. It was still a close call, but they just gave up in the last quarter of the game.
Well, I think St. Joseph's have improved, Sudarshan, and let's not take something away from them, because after those first initial losses to Isipathana and to Royal, I think they've come back and they're playing much better now. So they were a team that probably didn't have a lot of time together. They didn't understand each other as much as they would have liked to in the first couple of games. But now I think they will be a force to be reckoned with going forward in the tournament, in the knockouts. This Josephian team will need to look out for them.
Absolutely. As for the Josephians, Chaturasani Viradna playing in his former home grounds was phenomenal. He controlled the game with his brute, scored a try himself as well, and also Gamanu Chetia was very safe under the high ball, because Samuel Madhuanta was opting for those territorial kicks, and Gamanu Chetia was right on the money.
Yeah, it's good to see as well. I thought there were some good fullback performances this whole weekend. And we saw Murshid Zubair playing very well for Wesley. We saw Chamod Fernando outstanding for Isipathana. And now we saw Gamunu Chetia for St. Joseph's as well. So it's nice to see the number 15 jersey, a bit of competition for places there. But if you've got a back three who can negate the territorial kicking, Sudarshana, that's going to be the key to winning in this in the schools league.
Absolutely. And now on that game, St. Anthony's number 8, Mohammad Shabir, needs a mention. He was a hearty player. He created the first try and he was all around the park, even blocked one of Chatura's kicks in the goal. So applause to you, Shabir. And we go on to the final game of the week. Monday rugby again, but this time it was not a close affair. Trinity taking on Prince of Wales.
Well, Trinity like to play on Monday, don't they? I think they probably like to go to the chapel maybe on Sunday, have that service, and then they've got extra player in their side on the Monday. But 94 points, I'm sure Coach Lotte would have set a target of 100 points for them. I think they would have fallen 6 short, and I'm sure he would have reminded them of that. So that's something to think about. But 41 points at halftime, they would have expected maybe to put them away a little earlier on in that game. They would have expected maybe the 50 points at halftime so that they can capitalize on that. But again, they unloaded the bench, and it was interesting to see how they were able to prevent Prince of Wales from scoring a single try as well. So they're looking at the attack, they're looking at the defense, and still Trinity are the team to beat.
16 tries scored and only 7 converted, and there was a word around saying if Trinity didn't bother to convert, they could have maybe actually gone on to get the 100-point mark. But what's concerning, Shanak, is again in this game Trinity getting 2 yellow cards. Now against Prince of Wales, where you don't have that much of retaliation, you give away 2 yellow cards, that's going to be a problem, because Trinity has had trouble with yellow cards. They got a yellow card with St. Thomas's, they got yellow cards with Wesley, so that's going to be a problem.
It's going to be a huge problem, and we saw last year as well Rahul Karnathila getting that key yellow card, conceding the Canon RS Seram trophy from that point. We've had the yellow cards against Wesley as well in a game that they won comfortably, and in a game that you're winning 94-9, if you're still conceding a yellow card, that's a big problem, Sudarshana. But one aspect is that this Trinity side is very aggressive. They're physically dominant, so I think they like to just feel that they've done some damage to the opponent, and that's not the way they should be playing their rugby. So I think they need to control that aggression. The aggression needs to come out in a good way, in a constructive way, and they need to be very disciplined, because they need to look inwards and see what are we doing that's upsetting the referees, what are we doing that we can control, and if they channel that aggression in the right way, I think it's going to be a very easy walk in the park for them to win this title. But if they don't, they'll let themselves down.
Cambrians, on the other hand, did look out of sorts, but Nalin Taranga, oh boy, how good was he? He was the fullback for Prince of Wales, got 3 penalties. He's the highest point scorer for Prince of Wales this season. And mind you, out of the 2 yellow cards Trinity got, both were against Nalin Taranga, who was late charged, but he managed to get up every time he was knocked down.
Well, good to see, isn't it? When you're losing a game by almost 100 points and you're still playing with heart towards the end of that game, I think that's all that Prince of Wales could do, and I think they did it well. You've got to take your hat off to them.
So Taranga, for that performance, earned our Player of the Game accolade. Now, Shanaka, last time we had a question: who was the most influential player of the 4th week, and we've gotten interesting answers, but this time I'm going to put you a little more in trouble. Who do you think was the most influential team in this concluded week? My opinion and my viewpoint was it was Isipathana coming back from a defeat to win that important game, and also to do it at Royal Complex. They were the best team last week, but who would you pick as your team?
Well, in terms of a team performance, Sudarshan, I'm looking at this using the word team. I think in terms of a team performance, I thought Zaira were the best team on the weekend. I thought they really did well to beat more fancied opposition. I look at Isipathana and I look at Isipathana and Royal being quite evenly matched, and I look at Royal not having their best game either. So I'm not going to take anything away from Isipathana. I thought they were fantastic to come back into that game. But in terms of Zahira playing more fancied opposition, playing a Wesley team that was really good on the day as well, and still managing to almost get over that line with far less resources, with their captain absent as well, that's why I'm giving it to them.
So there you go, Isipathana for me, Zahira for Shanaka. But do comment on this video who you thought was the most influential team in this concluded Schools Rugby League. And that's a wrap for us on the breakdown. I'm Sudarshan signing off alongside Shanaka.